Oda is finally showing us all the legends of the old One Piece world, including all the members of the Rocks Pirates, the Roger Pirates, and the Kuja Pirates, but with them come another wave of hidden secrets and translation details, such as Roger's new named attack Aramitama and its religious etymology, or Xebec's secret plan to attain two very specific fruits. So let's break down this chapter of One Piece together. However, before that, I want to tell you that the Library of Ohara Globe plushie is back. If you didn't know, a couple of years ago, I released the Library of Ohara Globe plushie, providing a canonically accurate recreation of the world in adorable squishy plushie form, filled with plenty of hidden details, Easter eggs, and islands to discover. A lot of people bought it and really loved it, but since some of you missed on it, this time it's back, but in a different old map color, perfect for either pairing it with the original or finally getting it if you missed out on the original release 2 years ago. However, like the previous one, this plushie will only enter production through crowdfunding, meaning that we need at least 200 orders for it to enter production and actually be made. The crowdfunding only lasts for 10 days until the 15th, so if you're interested, please consider ordering your plushie right now so you can get it within this short window. And don't worry, even if the crowdfunding does not succeed, you'll get your money back, so you'll literally have nothing to lose. Go to the link in the description below to get your very own Library of Ohara Globe plushie and help fund it before the 15th to make it a reality. Thank you! On the cover, we see the Straw Hat Pirates overlaid with the Roger Pirates, driving further the parallel between Rayleigh and Zoro and Sanji and Gaban. Zoro and Rayleigh are both swordsmen with scars on their eyes, and Rayleigh was known as the King of the Underworld, sometimes mistranslated as Dark King, while Zoro is called the King of Hell. On the other, Sanji and Gaban seem to be quite passionate about women, though Gaban became loyal to Ripley after marrying, which I can only hope Sanji will too, and fittingly, while Sanji is inspired to be French, Gaban also carries a French name, which Oda revealed in the most recent SBS was lifted from French actor Jean Gabin, written with an I. Behind Luffy instead is Nami, which isn't on either Rayleigh or Gaban's side, instead being behind both right behind Luffy. So you could argue Oda is still emphasizing how important she is to Luffy, but rather than being one of his wings, a term that applies to both Rayleigh and Gaban and Zoro and Sanji, she is more like his brains or something like that, but one might as very well argue that Oda just likes drawing big Namis in color spreads. On her hat, she has the writing Belle, a reference to Belle-Mère, her mother. Riding on Luffy is the rest of the crew, including Brook, who interestingly has red dyed hair here. Starting the chapter, we see a certain kingdom, likely in the Grand Line, but we don't quite get its name, unfortunately. It's characterized by its tower spires, and if you look closely, you can also see a large bridge on the right extending from it. All the men in this kingdom have fallen powerless against their oppressors, though funnily this also includes a man who just appears to be sleeping with a nightcap on. The responsible for these aggressions appear to be the Kuja Pirates, who this chapter refers to in its title as Aidoru, or idols, who are adored by their beauty. We see them sailing in the same ship that we will later see Hancock riding, which is called the Perfume Yuda, being carried by two large Yuda snakes who are so poisonous that even sea kings stay away from them, allowing them to carry the ship, alongside the help of its paddles, along the calm belt where their homeland is. The chapter refers to them as coming from a Nyoninkoku, or female country, a term that has been used before, of course referring to the Empire of Amazon Lily. As a reminder, while Amazon Lily is the name of the country, the island itself is called Woman Island, or Island of Woman if that rolls off better for you, written as Nyorashima in Japanese, but occasionally Amazon Lily is used to refer to the territory as a whole, like we see with some other islands. As we know, Kuja are almost identical to humans, but have the peculiar trait of only being able to give birth to women, for which they leave the island when reaching adulthood in Journey of a Suitor, and then return to the island with a newborn girl to raise as their daughter alone. The country is governed by an empress whose position is seemingly attained via power and meritocracy, though this hasn't ever been quite fully clarified. It's simply implied as we don't really see a direct relation between a lot of of the Empresses, and also serving as the captain of their military, the Kuja pirates, who launch expeditions overseas. This chapter introduces us to a young Gloriosa, the current Empress and captain of the Kuja pirates, who would later appear and go by the name of Elder Nyon, and assist Luffy during the Amazon Lily arc. The name Nyon likely referring to just her constantly saying Nyon, sounding like an old grandma, like whoa, but also being a pun on Nyon, woman, the name of their island, Nyogashima. Her outfit is quite similar to Hancock's, an outfit intended for an empress, which even carries the symbol of Kuja, as that word simply means 9 snakes in Japanese, so the logo carries 9 snakes in it, in a shape reminiscent of a sun, perhaps a hint to the culture's old ties in the past. Here, as we see, much like Hancock, Gloriosa's beauty was admired by all, even causing many ladies to swing the other side because of how beautiful she is, with one of them even stating that her heart is filing for bankruptcy. Even the snakes around them get hearts in their eyes, with a beauty that surpasses even mankind itself. Interestingly, one of the Kuja looks like Cosmos, a current member of the Kuja pirates in the present, but I doubt she's that old without having changed much, so I wonder if this happens to be her mother. There's also another Kuja next to Gloriosa in the next page, who wears an open jacket over her body, a fashion trend later used by Rindo in the present. This entire scene, however, helps debunk an idea some people had that it was Hancock's fruit that made others fawn over her beauty, but as we see here, it clearly wasn't the case. Her fruit has the ability to act upon her charm to petrify others, but the constant admiration she received from everyone was due to her beauty alone, and the same goes for Gloriosa here. She isn't the only one to be so admired, however, because while she receives a bunch of fan letters, many of which seem to be actual love letters given the hard seals on them, Shaki gets even more letters in a far larger basket. The one managing the letters here is a young Tritoma, who would serve as future Empress of Amazon Lily before Hancock. As a quick reminder, at present the current Empress is, of course, Boa Hancock. The one who came before her is Tritoma, who was previously only mentioned in an SBS, but we finally get to see here in the story. Then before that was Shaki, and before that Gloriosa, and we see here the period in which Gloriosa was captain and Shaki vice captain before she eventually took over, at a time when Shaki should be 20 years old. Each of their names, like all from Amazon Lily, are derived from flowers, like Amazon Lily itself. The Gloriosa flower, also known as the Far Lily, the Shakuyaku flower or the Peony, the Tritoma flower or Red Hot Poker, and the Hancock flower or the Asiatic Lily. In fact, Shakuyaku being named after a flower was a big hint to her identity as a Kuja long before it had been confirmed. We also see this referenced in this chapter, as despite the use of the word idol phonetically, the kanji reading for that word reads as Takane no Hana, which means flowers beyond reach. The interesting thing is that it was mentioned that all of these women ended up falling in love, and as a result suffered from love sickness, suffering from it as a result. Love sickness is actually a real thing, and while not considered a disease or infection, it is a state in which the body's defenses and strength can be lowered due to the psychological strain of feeling enamored, especially if that love is unrequited. In Hancock's case, of course, it's her love for Luffy. As for Tritoma though, we don't know who she fell for, but we do know that eventually the love sickness tragically took her and she lost her life, which is why Hancock eventually took over. Going further back though, we could assume Shaki's crush was in fact Rayleigh, as the two eventually married and settled together in Shabondi, though clearly with a fairly casual relationship given how many times Rayleigh would just vanish for months at a time. But for Gloriosa, she claimed to have fallen in love in her youth, but we never knew with who until now, her object of admiration being none other than Gol D. Roger. Here we see him in full force aboard the Oro Jackson, already in his possession decades before Tom even began work on the sea train, and in fact the ship already possessing its mysterious egg. Here Roger still had his straw hat on him, and similarly his sword Ace too, while also looking a lot more like his son, Ace. He calls to the Kuja from a megaphone with a small Denden Mushi on it, essentially being powered by it. However, we see Shakuyaku coming out to his call, easily entrancing several members of Roger's crew, including Ganryu, Colonel Mugren, Spencer, Rowing, Rangram, Donkino, Max Marks, and even Gaban and Roger. The only one that doesn't fully fall for her beauty is the stern and serious Rayleigh, who seems to be the only one she actually takes a liking looking to as a result, winking at him and calling him Rei-san. This is because, of course, these two would eventually end up married, and she would continue calling him Rei-san in the future too, as we see in Shibandi. In her Fever card long ago, it was said that Shaki was once a really powerful pirate, and I'll be damned if we don't see that here, managing to overpower someone like Roger, though clearly, obviously, that's thanks to her beauty rather than a fully fair match. We see that her appearance is quite similar, all things considered, with the wing-like flaps on her neck matching those of her current outfit. Still smoking all the time, but with longer hair similar to Hancock's in the present. However, another party joins the fray, being Monkey D. Garp, who pursued Roger many times in the past as we were told, but if you remember, Shaki claimed that in her days as a pirate, she also had been chased by Garp quite a lot, which we finally see here in action. She would eventually, however, quit piracy altogether 42 years ago, not that long after this point, if anything it should be a couple years away, when she decided to give up on her pirating life to open Shaki's rip-off bar in Shibandi, where Rayleigh would later join her sometime after Roger's death. Interestingly, in an SBS, when a fan asked if Shaki was part of the Rocks, Ona very much dodged this question and joked around there being some correlation between the two, which makes me wonder if Shaki did join the Rocks if only very briefly, but perhaps it instead was just Gloriosa who joined the Rocks, perhaps leading to Shaki taking over Amazon Lily during that time and becoming the captain of the Kuja Pirates, and that is the connection Oda was alluding to. As the two run away, we see in fact that Gloriosa is suffering from love sickness, with her chest hurting from being rejected by Roger. Shaki calls her Ne-san, which means big sister, similarly indicating that the two are in fact related, and Shaki is Gloriosa's little sister. Meanwhile, as we see, Garp looks a lot like Dragon and Luffy, carrying his iconic white suit, and was already a Marine Headquarters Vice Admiral at this time. He unleashes his iconic Genkotsu Meteor, which literally means, as seen in his kanji reading, knuckle meteorites, where he throws cannonballs with his bare hands for massive damage, which we had seen used against the Thousand Sunny when Luffy was trying to leave Water 7. Roger, however, retaliates with a brand new move called Aramitama. This word is a religious term from Japanese Shinto belief, being one of the aspects which forms the spirit of a soul or deity. This is a bit simplified, but basically these aspects are found in the form of the Aramitama, which means the rampaging spirit, and the Nigimitama, which means the gentle spirit, among potential others, with one being more violent and the other one being more peaceful. So it makes sense that a powerful attack would be named after the violent one. What is interesting is that this is similar to his other attack named Kamusari, after translated as Divine Departure, which is a term from the old Japanese Kojic attacks that serves as a religious term that combines the kanji for God and to evade or to repel, and was originally used to poetically refer to the death or departure of a god. So we see a deep connection between Roger's attacks and Shintoism, but particularly with the more violent side and the concept of slaying gods, which could of course tie with the idea of the D and the celestial dragons. We see Roger and Garp clashing with each other, both using advanced Conqueror's Haki to the point they don't even touch each other. Interestingly though, Roger appears to be hitting Garp backwards with the blunt side of his sword, maybe because he doesn't want to kill him, but rather just wants to whack him really hard, which shows the friendship between the two. We take a brief detour from our Roger and Rock's days to check in on Elbaf, where Loki tried to set out to sea but almost drowned. Ida got mad that his rescuers even hesitated and even offered Loki the chance to live with her, but unfortunately Loki was too deep in his distrust that he couldn't trust in her. We do see during this period, however, also a young Mato, who as we know would eventually become the bartender of Ida's bar, once again making us wonder just what actually happened to Ida. Cutting back to Rox's side, we cut to Pirate Island Hachinosu, where at this time the mountain still wasn't shaped like a skull, instead being referred to as looking more like a fish. Several months have passed since the Pirate Island occupation incident, as Xebec has now taken control of Hachinosu. A man shows up to Pirate Island wearing a cape and donning a silver axe. He appears to be quite lanky and tiny, however after a pirate tries to kick him, he suddenly grows in size to be twice as tall as him, and suddenly appears to be far more muscular than he first appeared, with his small hand suddenly becoming a fist large enough to fully grab the man's entire head. This doesn't just seem like wacky perspective, but rather the power of a devil fruit, which is actually quite similar to one we've currently seen, Rouge's devil fruit. This yet unnamed devil fruit, one of the few yet to be named mind at this point, seems to act like karma, turning damage received into strength, allowing Urush to increase in size and muscle power, something that fits with Urush's entire personality being based around religion and karma. Though I wonder if in this case, this was accumulated beforehand or is showing a greater mastery of this fruit where it can be used even sometime after. The individual bearing this power turns in fact to be a killer by the name of Kyou, who carries the same epithet as Shiki of Gokudo, which, if you remember from the previous video, is a term that is often used to refer to Yakuza, to organized crime, which makes sense as he was referred to as Shiki's rival by one of the other pirates. Fittingly, he too wears a kimono, one with an axe pattern on it, and also has a large tattoo with an axe on his chest, very similar to a Yakuza tattoo. The axe motif is also seen on his sunglasses, as well as on his chin, in a scar quite similar to the Drake's current scar, but I wonder if that's just coincidental or we have yet another case of nepopiece. The axe motif should however be an important hint, as just like we are told, this is the man who would later be known as Gimbu, translating to Silver Axe, which Sengoku cited 6 years ago as one of the famous members of the Rock Pirates alongside Ochoku, finally making his debut after all these years. His iconic silver axe can be seen here, though it seems to have grown in size with him too, much like his clothes I suppose. Some people wonder if the silver axe wielding General Zombie seen in Thriller Bark could be him as well. His name Kyou is written with the kanji Kyou, which means evil, wicked, or embodies the concept of bad luck. Suddenly though, two massive holes erupt from the mountain, being Xebec who wanted to make space for a view, forming the mountain's current iconic shape as a pirate skull. Xebec declares that he wishes to get his hands on two devil fruits. He claims that one of them should be in Elbaf, which is almost certainly the legendary devil fruit that Loki supposedly ate, but he claims they would only really show its worth when Harald would eat it, which would suggest that either one, it would work best in the hands of a giant, or two, more simply just in the hands of someone really strong like Harald, so Xebec wanted to be eaten by someone as strong as him. But after that, Captain John, the other legendary pirate that Buggy so admired and wanted to find his treasure, claims that they needed to find the Galela, the army of hammer-wielding giants which we talked about a couple of chapters ago. Given how Xebec already has access to Elbaf, the way he words it by saying, "and then we must find Galela," seems to imply that Galela holds the clue to the other fruit, but in which way that works we don't really know. Big Mom, who at this time was yet only known as just Charlotte Linlin the pirate, says she had her intelligence network look into it, referring to the vast network we saw her using during Whole Cake Island, but couldn't find much about them, likely due to the fact that Galela is now seemingly in Punk Hazard. Stroyson, her head chef and partner with which she started the crew if you remember, wonders if they are dead, as they couldn't be revived, something kind of ironic considering that many of the members of the Rock's Pirates would be killed and later revived. But Linlin tells him to stop talking of daydreams, which is a quote fairly similar to her iconic quote of "stop dreaming" that she uses many times across the series. Given the importance of this duality of fruits, what first comes to mind is no doubt the Gomu Gomu no Mi and the Yami Yami no Mi, and considering that many of us have been speculating that the former may actually be the fruit that was meant to be in Elbaf, with Loki potentially never having eaten it and ending in Shanks' hands and later Luffy's hands, the other being the Yami Yami no Mi would be quite fitting, given Blackbeard's ambition to attain that fruit as well. But why exactly would Xebec want both, and why are they so essential in taking down Marijois? At the very least, one of these two fruits is almost certainly the national treasure of Hachinosu, which if you remember, it was strongly implied during the God Valley incident, as seen in Kuma's flashback, that the Celestial Dragons had taken the national treasure of Hachinosu as a prize for the tourney, which is one of the reasons why Rocks ended up storming God Valley to get it back. And this was strongly implied by what the Rocks Pirates said in that chapter, that it was one of the devil fruits found there, which would be either the Uou no Mi Model Seiryu, which Big Mom gave to Kaido, the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi which Kuma ate, or potentially another fruit that isn't either of the two. But I would strongly bet that one of the two fruits that Rocks is talking about here is in fact the fruit that would end up in God Valley, and likely not the one in Elbaf, assuming that he never made it out of there until the incident with Harold some years ago. ago. Among those, at the very least, I wonder if legitimately it could just be the Nikyu no Mi. It may not seem that powerful, but think of it, to actually invade and enter Marijois, then actually using the powers of the Nikyu no Mi could allow you to send potentially an entire army there to invade. We also see, in fact, speaking of him, Kaido, who just joined the crew this very year, assuming we're still 44 years ago, as last chapter claimed that's when Xebec took over Hachinosu, which is described here as a recent event. And Kaido should be 15 years old by now, despite appearing older due to his massive size, whereas Big Mom is 24, while Whitebeard is 30. Kaido suggests just killing off Harold, but Xebec is angry, calling him a friend, though he uses the term dachi, an abbreviation of tomodachi that is a more casual way to call a friend, like the English word pal, which interestingly is the same term that Luffy also uses at present to refer to some of his non-Nakama friends, something that definitely adds more moral ambiguity to Xebec as a character who isn't as completely ruthless to all as he seems, only to his enemies. Chipping into the conversation as well though is a large man by the name of Barbel, who is a pirate and a namazu or catfish fishman, which explains his skin-like mustache, just like that of a catfish. He appears to be quite large and wears a necklace similar to Ace's. While not mentioned by name previously, we did seemingly spot him during the God Valley incident, appearing among the Rock's pirates, though in that case, while he had the iconic mustache, so this is clearly him, he was lacking his hair, seemingly having shaved, unless this was a mistake by Oda or something. His name, Barbell, refers to the bar used for weightlifting, but interestingly, this name is quite similar to that of Sunbell, the other fishman of the Roger Pirates, who has an appearance fairly similar to that of Barbell, suggesting the two could be siblings or just maybe connected in some way. And so this massive gathering of pirates formed what is arguably the most powerful crew to have ever existed. Edward Newgate, Shiki, Buckingham Stussy, Ochoku, Don Marlon, Ganzui, Charlotte Lin Lin, Stroyson, Kaido, Captain John, Barbell, and later Kyo, Gloriosa, Gil Bastar, and many more. Rock's Xebec has a vision, and he declares that he will show them the pinnacle of the world, the same exact words that really gave Luffy to one day reach the pinnacle, but words that to each hold very different meanings about what lies at the top of the world.